Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some maps lead to places that no longer exist, or perhaps never should have. Tonight, we open a forgotten file from a defunct intelligence program, a single, anomalous record of a location that appeared on Earth for only one day and was never seen again. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again, and some maps lead to places that were never meant to be found. Welcome back to the Obsidian Archive. Tonight we descend into a case that defies not only explanation, but the very laws of geography and time. It's a story born not from a headline or a police report, but from a whisper in the dust, a single piece of paper that should not exist. Our journey begins in the silent, cavernous heart of the National Archives Annex, a place where history is stored, cataloged, and sometimes buried. It was here, in the late 1990s, that a junior archivist named Dr. Alistair Finch made a discovery that would consume the rest of his professional life. While undertaking a mundane recataloguing project of decommissioned Cold War-era meteorological data, his hand brushed against a folder that felt different. It was out of place, wedged between weather balloon telemetry reports from 1961 and 1963. The folder itself was an anomaly. While the surrounding files were standard government-issue manila, this one was a heavier grayish cardstock, cool to the touch, with no official markings, no department seal, no declassification date. It bore only a simple stenciled label, File 734B. Curiosity, the archivist's greatest virtue and most dangerous vice, took hold. Dr. Finch logged the file under a miscellaneous acquisitions code, a small breach of protocol he would later describe as a necessary transgression, and took it to a private study carrel. The air in the archive was always still, but as he sat with the file, a palpable sense of cold seemed to emanate from it. He later wrote in his private journal, "It was as if the document itself was a sinkhole for warmth, for certainty. It felt ancient, and yet impossibly new." This single file, no thicker than a dozen pages, contained the only known record of a place that has no name, no coordinates, and no history beyond a single, terrifying day. It is the sole piece of evidence for a location that appeared on Earth for less than an hour, and then vanished, as if it had never been. This is the story of that file, the event it documents, and the chilling possibility that our world is occasionally visited by places not on any map, places that exist just outside our perception, waiting for a momentary tear in the fabric of reality. The anomaly wasn't just the file's location in the archives. The anomaly was what the file represented. A ghost on the map, a geographical impossibility that was witnessed, recorded, and then systematically erased from all other records. Dr. Finch had found the first and last clue. The weight of an impossibility is a heavy thing to hold. Inside File 734B, Dr. Finch found not answers, but a carefully constructed labyrinth of questions. The document was a masterclass in bureaucratic obfuscation, yet what it failed to hide was far more terrifying than what it redacted. The first page was a cover sheet from an agency that doesn't officially exist, the U.S. Department of Cartographic Security. Below the name, a stark warning was typed in a severe sans serif font, Event 3 Delta,
ocular witness testimony, temporal geographic anomaly, eyes only, burn before reading. The very paper felt wrong. Later analysis, funded by Finch out of his own pocket, through a trusted university contact, revealed the paper stock contained synthetic polymers that wouldn't be invented for another 20 years. The ink was carbon-based, but laced with trace elements not found in any known combination on Earth. The contents were sparse, chillingly so. Most of the text was covered in thick black bars of redaction, a brutalist form of censorship that spoke of deep-seated panic. Whole paragraphs, names, and technical data were obliterated. But what remained was a skeletal narrative of profound strangeness. The file contained 3 items of note. First, a meteorological summary for August 17, 1962, detailing a sudden, localized, and inexplicable temperature drop of nearly 40 degrees Fahrenheit in a 5-square-mile area of the Nevada desert. It was accompanied by a barometric pressure spike and a burst of electromagnetic radiation that mimicked the signature of a high-altitude nuclear detonation, yet no such test had occurred. Second, there was a single photograph. It was grainy, overexposed, and taken from a distance. The photo depicted a small cluster of buildings on a barren desert plain. But the architecture was wrong. The structures were tall and slender, made of a dark, non-reflective material.
There were no windows, no doors, no roads leading to or from the location. The angles of the buildings were unsettling, almost Escher-like, seeming to defy conventional geometry. It was a town with no purpose, no entry, no exit. It was a place that simply was. The photo's caption was redacted, save for 2 words: the Incursion. Finally, there was the transcript of an interview with a single witness, whose name was blacked out, identified only as Observer 1. The transcript detailed the witness's approach, his confusion, and the overwhelming primal sense of dread the location emanated. He described a profound silence, a lack of any ambient sound, no wind, no insects, nothing. He spoke of a strange, colorless light that seemed to be absorbed by the structures rather than reflected. File 734B was not a report. It was a ghost story told in the sterile language of a classified government document. It was the official record of an event that officially never happened. Proof of a place that could not be.
To understand the document, we must go back to the day it describes. August 17, 1962. It was a Friday. In the wider world, John F. Kennedy was president, the Cold War was a simmering, ever-present dread, and the space race was in full swing. But in the vast, empty expanse of the Nevada desert, miles from any designated test site or town, the world was about to hold its breath. The day began like any other. The sun beat down on the cracked earth, and the sky was a sheet of unbroken crystalline blue. The air was hot, still, and thick with the scent of sagebrush. At approximately 3:47 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, something changed. According to the scant data in File 734B, military and civilian radar stations across the Southwest registered a momentary, inexplicable blind spot. For 94 seconds, a circular area roughly 5 miles in diameter simply ceased to exist on their screens, replaced by a wash of pure static. Simultaneously, geological sensors in the region detected a seismic tremor that matched no known earthquake profile. It was a single sharp jolt, followed by an unnerving silence. For anyone on the ground within that circle, the experience would have been profoundly disorienting. The temperature, which had been hovering near 105 degrees Fahrenheit, plummeted to a frigid 65. The air pressure spiked, making ears pop. The brilliant desert sun seemed to dim, as if a cloud had passed over it, but the sky remained clear. A low, resonant hum, described in the file as being felt more than heard, vibrated through the ground. And then it appeared. From nothing. One moment, there was an empty stretch of desert highway. The next, shimmering in the distorted air like a mirage, was a town. It didn't rise from the ground or descend from the sky. It simply resolved. It coalesced into reality. The location, as depicted in the file's single haunting photograph, stood stark against the desert landscape. Its architecture was a silent scream of wrongness.
The lines were too clean, the angles too perfect. It was a collection of obsidian-like structures that seemed to drink the light, casting no discernible shadows, despite the afternoon sun. There were no signs of life, no movement, no sound. It was a perfect, sterile, and utterly alien diorama that had been placed upon the earth. For 53 minutes, it stood there, a silent, impossible visitor on the face of our planet. Air Force patrols were scrambled, but by the time they reached the coordinates, there was nothing to see. At 4:40 p.m., as suddenly as it arrived, it vanished. The temperature and air pressure snapped back to normal. The strange hum ceased. The radar blind spot disappeared. All that was left was the empty desert, a lingering, unnatural chill in the air, and one man who saw it all.
Every ghost story needs its witness. The sole account of the location that appeared only once comes from the transcript in File 734B. The witness, Observer 1, was later identified through Dr. Finch's painstaking off-the-books research as Nevada Highway Patrol Officer James Miller. Miller was a 15-year veteran, a man known for his calm demeanor and meticulous reports. He was everything you'd want in a reliable observer, grounded, sober, and not prone to flights of fancy. On August 17, 1962, he was on a routine patrol of a lonely stretch of Route 375. What follows are excerpts from his debriefing, conducted 3 days later by men he described only as wearing dark suits and no expressions. Interviewer: state your name and badge number for the record. Miller: Officer James Miller, badge 714. Interviewer: Officer, describe the events of August 17th, beginning at approximately 15:45 hours. Miller: I was heading east. The heat was... It was a normal day. Then the air got cold. Fast. My patrol car's thermometer dropped 30, maybe 40 degrees in a minute. My radio went to static. Just loud static. I thought it was my engine, so I pulled over. That's when I felt the shaking. A hum. Deep. It was in my teeth, you know. Interviewer: describe what you saw. Miller: I looked up, down the road. The air was wiggling, like over a hot road, but it was cold. And then, it was just there. The town, maybe a half mile away. It wasn't there a second before, I swear to God, it just appeared. Interviewer: describe the structures. Miller: they were black. Not painted black. Just black. Like holes in the sky. Tall buildings, but no windows. Sharp edges. The shapes. They hurt my eyes to look at. They didn't make sense. I got out of the car. There was no sound. Nothing. The wind wasn't blowing. I couldn't hear my own footsteps on the gravel. I drew my service revolver. I don't know why. I felt watched. Not like a person watching. Like the buildings themselves were looking at me. Interviewer: did you approach the location? Miller: I took maybe 20 steps. A feeling came over me. A bad feeling. It wasn't just fear. It was a feeling that I wasn't supposed to be there, that I was trespassing somewhere very, very old,
I got back in my car. I just sat there and watched it. I couldn't look away. And then it was gone, just like it came. The air wiggled again, and it was just desert. The heat came back. The radio started crackling. It was over. Officer Miller's life unraveled after that day. According to Dr. Finch's research, he was placed on indefinite administrative leave. He became withdrawn, obsessive, filling notebooks with sketches of the impossible buildings he had seen. He spoke of nightmares, of a deep, humming silence that followed him everywhere. His official report was classified and buried. He was discredited. His colleagues told he'd suffered a heat-induced hallucination. James Miller died of a heart attack in 1971 at the age of 48. He was a man haunted by a memory of a place that never was, the sole witness to a location that appeared on a map of our world for less than an hour, leaving behind nothing but a ghost in the archives and a permanent chill in the soul of the man who saw it.
When the first expedition team returned from their mission, they did not bring back soil samples or resource assessments. They brought back an artifact far more dangerous, a map that should not exist. They brought back proof of the impossible. In the sterile, windowless rooms of a secure mapping facility deep underground, the data from Project Sandpiper was fed into the mainframe computers. Cartographers and analysts, men who had spent their lives defining the world in grids and contour lines, watched their understanding of reality crumble. The data was unequivocal. In the middle of the desert basin, they had been sent to survey, a location mapped with satellite precision for years, was a new, self-contained valley. It was approximately 5 square kilometers, nestled between two mesas that, according to every existing survey, were 20 kilometers apart. It was a cartographic impossibility. The initial reaction was disbelief. They assumed equipment malfunction. They ran diagnostics, recalibrated sensors, and processed the data again. The result was the same. The valley was there. Aerial reconnaissance photos taken by the team showed it clearly. A lush, strangely symmetrical canyon, filled with flora that defied botanical classification. But high-altitude spy plane and satellite imagery from the same day, at the same time, showed nothing but empty desert. It was as if the location existed only within a certain radius of perception, a blind spot on the face of the planet. The project's lead analyst, a man named Elias Vance, famously wrote in a panicked memo to his superiors, "We are not mapping a place. We are mapping a paradox. The data suggests a transient, localized fold in space-time. The ground team was able to enter it, survey it, and leave. But from above, it is not there. It cannot be there. To reconcile this data is to accept that our fundamental laws of geography are wrong." This memo was immediately classified, and Vance was reassigned. The map they produced became a classified legend, referred to only as the Sandpiper chart. It depicted a place with non-Euclidean geometry. Paths that were walked in straight lines were recorded as curves. The valley's center, which contained a strange, monolithic rock formation, registered on seismic sensors as being infinitely dense, a gravitational anchor. Yet it cast no shadow. The most disturbing finding was what they called the data scar. After the expedition left, the valley vanished as suddenly as it appeared. But it left a ghost in the machine. All subsequent geological and magnetic surveys of the area returned null readings. Not zero, but a true null. An absence of data, as if a piece of the desert had been carved out of reality itself, leaving a void that sensors could not penetrate. The Sandpiper chart was locked away, deemed a threat to national security. Not because it showed a new location, but because it proved that the very ground beneath our feet was not as solid or as permanent as we believed. The discovery of a cartographic impossibility sent shockwaves through the highest levels of the clandestine government. The question was no longer, what is it? But can we control it? The decision was made to send in a second team. Project Sandpiper was moved from a scientific survey to a black book military operation. This was not an expedition. It was an incursion. The team was handpicked. Instead of geologists, they sent a dozen seasoned Special Forces operators from an elite, unacknowledged unit. They were accompanied by a signals intelligence specialist, a quantum physicist, whose name appears nowhere else in any public record, and Dr. Eris Thorne, who insisted on returning, believing he was the only one who could understand the phenomenon. Their equipment was the stuff of science fiction. Environmental suits designed to withstand unknown atmospheric pressures. Experimental navigation systems meant to function in areas of spatial distortion, and high-energy radio transmitters to maintain contact at all costs. Their departure was a sterile, silent affair. No records were kept. They were ghosts, sent to investigate a ghost. We have pieced together what happened next from a single damaged reel of radio intercepts that was leaked by a sympathetic archivist decades later. The first hour of the recording is routine. Major Keene, now commanding the military element, confirms they have crossed the perimeter. He reports visual contact with the valley. "It's here," he says, his voice tight, just like the chart. Then, things begin to unravel. The physicist reports that his instruments are singing. He describes ambient radiation that doesn't conform to any known particle. Dr. Thorne, his voice a mix of terror and academic excitement, notes that the flora has changed. The monolithic structure, it's larger. It appears to be humming. The radio transcript becomes increasingly frantic. The signals specialist complains that he is hearing whispers on the carrier frequency, words in a language that isn't human. Keene orders his men into a defensive perimeter around the monolith. He reports that the sky inside the valley is turning a deep violet, even though it's midday. The final coherent transmission is from Dr. Thorne. He is shouting over a rising tide of static. "It's not a rock. It's an aperture. It's not from here. We have to... The geometry is..." The transmission cuts out. What follows is 47 minutes of pure, unbroken static. Then silence. For 3 weeks, search and rescue teams scoured the desert. They found the team's transport vehicles parked precisely where they had left them, just outside the area where the valley had appeared. They found a line in the sand, a demarcation point, beyond which there were no footprints, no tire tracks, no sign that a dozen men and tons of equipment had ever passed. They had walked into a place that was no longer there and had vanished along with it. The second expedition didn't just fail to report back. They were erased from existence, leaving behind only a final, chilling radio silence and an empty patch of desert at their vanishing point. The loss of the second expedition was the final nail in Project Sandpiper's coffin. Within 72 hours of the search effort being called off, a directive came down from an authority so high it had no name, only a symbol. The order was simple: bury it. What followed was a systematic and brutal campaign of informational warfare directed not at an enemy, but at history itself. The project was officially terminated. The official cause, for the few who even knew it existed, was listed as a catastrophic failure during a high-risk training exercise. The 13 men who vanished were declared dead, their families given folded flags, and a story about a helicopter crash in a storm that never happened. This was the first layer of the cover-up. The second layer was far more insidious. An army of clerks with black markers descended upon the archives. The name Sandpiper was redacted from thousands of pages. Budgets were zeroed out. Personnel files were sealed, and equipment manifests were shredded. Dr. Thorne's academic history was altered, his groundbreaking work attributed to others. Major Keene's distinguished military career was truncated, ending with a posthumous, mundane citation. The Sandpiper chart, the map of the impossible place, was supposedly incinerated. All that remains in the official record are ghosts and black ink, but secrets like this don't die. They fester. They become whispers in the hallways of power, ghost stories told by aging intelligence officers in smoky bars. We spoke to one such man, a former NSA archivist, who agreed to talk on condition of absolute anonymity. He told us the incineration of the chart was a lie. He claims a single copy was preserved and is held in a non-terrestrial materials vault, alongside artifacts that would rewrite human history. He also spoke of a survivor, not from the second expedition, but a lone surveyor from a secret third mission, a reconnaissance in force that was completely off the books. This surveyor supposedly made it back weeks later, wandering out of the desert, catatonic, and suffering from severe radiation burns and temporal dissociation. He spoke of a silent city under a black sun, before being permanently institutionalized in a secure medical facility, his identity erased. This is the legacy of Project Sandpiper, a file of blacked-out pages, a lingering data scar in the desert that defies scientific explanation, and whispers. Whispers of a place that can appear and disappear at will. The final unanswered question is the most terrifying. Was the project's goal to study the location, or was it an attempt to reopen a door they should never have found? The redactions don't just hide a failure. They hide a terrible truth. The location that appeared only once may not have been a one-time event. It may have simply been the first. Narrator. In the previous chapter, we examined the cartographic impossibility of Meridian Point, a phantom island that materialized on satellite feeds for 72 hours before vanishing. But the physical evidence gathered during that brief window presents an even deeper, more troubling enigma. This is the story of the rock beneath their feet, a foundation that defied the very laws of our planet. This is the geologist's paradox. Narrator. The lead geologist assigned to the hastily assembled expedition was Dr. Alistair Finch, a rising star from the USGS, known for his rigid adherence to empirical data. His field notes, declassified in 2018 with heavy redactions, begin with a tone of clinical excitement. On day 1, he writes, "Seismic readings are baffling. The island appears to be a basaltic extrusion, yet it sits on no discernible tectonic fault line. It's as if a piece of the planet's mantle simply surfaced. Age dating should clarify." Narrator. But clarification never came. It was replaced by confusion, then by what his later notes describe as a profound sense of intellectual terror. The core samples they drilled were the source. The rock was a dark, vitreous basalt, laced with crystalline structures that shimmered with an internal non-bioluminescent light. But when analyzed on site with a portable mass spectrometer, the results were nonsensical. The isotopic ratios of lead and uranium, the very clocks geologists use to date rock, were in a state of flux. They didn't point to a consistent age. One sample would read as 4 billion years old,
Another taken inches away would read as a mere 500 years old. A third would yield no coherent data at all, as if its atomic structure was actively resisting analysis. Narrator. In a frantic, unsanctioned radio transmission to a colleague at Caltech, Finch tried to articulate the problem. We only have the transcript. He said, and I quote, "It's not just that the data is wrong, it's malevolent. The rock isn't old or new, it's provisional. It behaves as if it's still deciding what its physical properties should be. Every law I've built my life on is being violated in my hands. This place shouldn't exist. It's a geological scar, a wound on reality itself." The most disturbing sample was labeled MP7. It was a piece of obsidian-like rock taken from the island's center. It was unnaturally cold to the touch and exhibited what Finch called non-Euclidean cleavage. When struck, it didn't fracture along predictable crystal planes. It shattered into complex, spiraling shapes that seemed to possess more surface area than the original volume should allow. Worse, it absorbed light and sound. Team members reported that standing near the sample crate felt like being in a vacuum. Ambient noise was dampened, and the air felt heavy, dead. Narrator. Dr. Finch's final log entry, written just hours before the island vanished, was not a scientific observation. It was a single panicked sentence scrawled in the margin of a datasheet. The ground is not a foundation. It is a scab, and something is moving underneath. When the extraction team arrived at the designated coordinates, there was nothing but open ocean. The island, the camp, and Dr. Alistair Finch were gone. The only things recovered were a few floating equipment cases. The rock samples that had been sent out via helicopter during the first day were immediately confiscated by a branch of the military so secret, its name is still classified. The official report concluded that Dr. Finch, under extreme stress, had fabricated his data before being lost at sea in a sudden squall. But his paradoxical findings, the ghost of an impossible geology, remain hidden in redacted files, a testament to a place that broke the world to exist, if only for a moment. Narrator. If the ground at Meridian Point was a paradox, the air was a void. While Dr. Finch's team analyzed the impossible rock, another unit was tasked with a different mission: to listen. This was the Acoustic Surveillance Division, a clandestine signals intelligence group. Their job was to plant sensors, record every vibration, every whisper of wind, and build a sound profile of the new landmass. What they found was far more terrifying than any sound. It was the absence of it. Narrator. The project was codenamed Echo Null. Their equipment was state-of-the-art for the era. Sensitive geophones to detect seismic tremors, parabolic microphones to capture distant sounds, and wide-spectrum recorders that could capture frequencies far above and below the range of human hearing. The lead audio engineer was a man named Sergeant Michael Thorne. His reports, unlike Finch's, were terse and technical. But between the lines of decibel readings and frequency charts, a story of profound unease unfolds. Narrator. On the first day, the recordings were normal, if unusually quiet. The dominant sounds were the wind and the sea. But on day 2, Thorne began documenting what he termed acoustic shadows. These were pockets of space, some small as a room, others spanning hundreds of yards, where sound simply ceased to exist, not dampened, not muffled, erased. In his log, he writes, "Walked into Zone 3 Alpha at 14 hours. All ambient noise cut out. Total signal loss on all microphones. I could see Corporal Jensen speaking not 10 feet away, but I heard nothing. Not his voice, not my own footsteps, not the hum of my own recording pack. It was the most absolute silence I have ever experienced. It felt hungry. The team's psychological state began to fray. To stand in a windy, open environment and hear nothing was a deeply unnatural sensory deprivation. Members reported dizziness, intense paranoia, and auditory hallucinations after leaving the zones of silence. They claimed to hear faint, chittering whispers or discordant musical notes in the moments the sound rushed back in. Thorne theorized that these shadows were not a natural phenomenon. He speculated that something on the island was actively canceling sound waves, a form of natural acoustic camouflage on an impossible scale. Narrator. The true mystery, however, lies in the tapes themselves. Of the 96 hours of audio recorded by Project Echo Null, only 4 minutes have ever been declassified. The rest are listed in government archives as missing or damaged by magnetic interference. But sources within the archival community whisper that the tapes weren't damaged. They were intentionally wiped, erased, because of what they contained. The one surviving fragment is from a geophone placed near the island's center, the same area where Dr. Finch found his anomalous rock samples. It's designated Tape 734, Segment 9. For 3 minutes and 50 seconds, there is nothing but the low rumble of deep Earth, the planet's normal hum. And then, for the final 10 seconds, something else emerges. It is not a sound made by wind, water, or any known geological or biological process. Analysts have described it as a cascading crystalline frequency with a complex, non-repeating mathematical structure. It sounds like a billion shards of glass being rearranged in a complex pattern, and it is deeply, profoundly unsettling. Narrator. And just as the sound reaches a crescendo, it cuts off. Not a fade, but an instantaneous stop. It is followed by 1 second of the acoustic shadow, a perfect digital zero silence that no analog tape should be able to record. Then the tape ends. What was this sound? Was it the island itself? Was it the source of the silence? Sergeant Thorne and his team were evacuated on the final day, just before the island vanished. His final report contained a single handwritten addendum. We were wrong to listen. It knows we heard it. Narrator. An impossible island appears and vanishes. Geologists are baffled by its rock. Audio engineers are terrified by its silence. In the aftermath, a government needs answers, or more accurately, it needs a story. An official narrative to close the book on the Meridian Point incident. And so the Ainsworth Report was born. A 300-page document that concluded the entire affair was a cascade of equipment malfunctions, meteorological anomalies, and mass hysteria among a stressed and isolated crew. It was a neat, tidy, and utterly false explanation. Narrator. For decades, the Ainsworth Report was the final word. It was the document that buried the truth under the weight of bureaucracy. But some truths refuse to stay buried. They leave behind whispers, clues for those willing to look. In this case, the clues were not in what the report said, but in how it was written. This is the story of the cipher, hidden in plain sight. Narrator. Enter Dr. Evelyn Reed, a computational linguist and cryptographer. In 2019, while studying patterns in declassified government documents, she ran the Ainsworth Report through a new pattern recognition algorithm. The software flagged something extraordinary, a series of anomalies that were statistically impossible to be coincidental. Certain letters in the report were printed with a barely perceptible flaw in the typeface, a few microns off-center. Specific page numbers were bolded when they shouldn't have been. The spacing, the kerning, between specific letter pairs varied according to a complex repeating pattern. To the naked eye, it was invisible. To Reed's algorithm, it was a beacon. Narrator. Reed realized she was looking at a steganographic cipher, a hidden message. It wasn't a code where letters were substituted, but a physical code embedded in the very layout of the document. It was a desperate message from the inside. Over the next 6 months, she worked to break it. The key, she discovered, was tied to the impossible geology of Meridian Point itself. The atomic weights of the anomalous isotopes reported in Finch's lost notes corresponded to the page, line, and character numbers of the hidden message. It was a cipher. Only someone with access to the raw, classified data could have created, or could ever hope to solve. Narrator. What she uncovered was breathtaking. Hidden within the bland, dismissive official report was a second, secret document. A shadow report, written by a dissenting scientist on the Ainsworth Committee. This hidden text told the real story of Meridian Point. It contained fragments of Dr. Finch's unsanitized notes describing the rock as not of this Earth's physical laws. It included transcripts from the Echo Null project, where one operator described the silence as a presence, not an absence. The shadow report spoke of other teams on the island. Biologists who found sterile soil but detected unidentifiable microbial DNA signatures in the air. It mentioned temporal distortions, where watches would lose or gain hours inexplicably. The final decoded paragraphs were a warning. The author claimed the official explanation was a cover story, not just to prevent public panic, but to stop anyone from looking for the island again. The author wrote, "This was not a place. It was an event, a temporary intersection. The models suggest it will happen again, a cyclical intrusion. To acknowledge it is to invite it. The silence of the archive is our only defense." The author signed off with a single letter. K. Narrator. We have followed the paper trail, the geologist's paradox, the acoustic void, the cipher in the margins. It all points to a truth far stranger than any official record. But documents are silent witnesses. They are echoes. To understand what truly happened at Meridian Point, we needed a voice, a human source who was there. After months of searching through encrypted channels, following the breadcrumb left in the Ainsworth report, we found him. The author of the Shadow Report. A man we can only call Witness K. Narrator. He agreed to meet on his terms. No cameras on his face? No recording of his real voice? He is an old man now, living under an assumed name, forever, looking over his shoulder. What follows is a transcript of our conversation, with his voice electronically disguised. Interviewer. Thank you for agreeing to speak with us. You were on the Ainsworth Committee? Witness K. Committee is a generous word. We were the cleanup crew. Our job wasn't to find the truth. It was to build a coffin and bury it. A coffin of lies, sealed with a government stamp. Interviewer. The things you wrote in the hidden report, the temporal distortions, the strange DNA, were they real? Witness K. Real? Real is a word for things that follow the rules. That place. Meridian Point. It wasn't playing by the rules. It was a rule breaker. It was a paragraph from a book that doesn't exist, accidentally inserted into our world. We weren't visitors there. We were typos, and the world was trying to correct itself. Interviewer: The geologist, Finch, he wrote that the ground felt like a scab. What did he mean? Witness K: He was closer than any of us. He understood. It wasn't land. It was tissue. A temporary healing of a wound we can't see. A wound in space-time, perhaps. It wasn't rising from the ocean floor. It was extruding into our dimension from elsewhere. The silence the audio team recorded. That was the sound of elsewhere. The absence of our physics. Interviewer: Did you see anything? Something that made you write that warning? Witness K: You don't see a thing like that. You feel it. It was an intelligence, but not a life form. It was a geometry, an awareness made of angles and impossibilities. On the last day, I saw the air shimmer. Not from heat, it was buckling. The perspective, the horizon, it was wrong. It was like the world was being folded up, put away. It didn't sink into the sea, it was retracted. Unhappened. Interviewer: Retracted? So it's gone forever? Witness K: Nothing is forever. It was a cyclical event, an intersection. My models, the ones they buried, showed the cycle is shortening. The membrane between worlds is getting thinner. The reason for the cover-up wasn't just to stop panic. It's because the phenomenon responds to observation. The more you look for it, the more you measure it, the more you call to it. Your program, this investigation, you're ringing a dinner bell, and you have no idea what's hungry. Narrator: With that, he stood up and walked out of the room, leaving us with his final terrifying warning. Witness K's testimony offers no comfort, no resolution. It paints a picture of a world far more fragile than we imagine, bordering on realities that can briefly, violently intersect with our own. Meridian Point was not just a place that appeared and disappeared. It was a warning, a glimpse into a vast, incomprehensible darkness. And according to the one man who saw the truth and lived to tell the tale, it is a warning we have failed to heed. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some maps don't show you where to go. They show you where you can no longer be. Narrator: We have archived the maps. We have analyzed the satellite data, or the lack thereof. We have chased the whispers of a place that existed for a single, fleeting moment on an official government chart before being violently expunged from history. But what of the witnesses? What is the human cost of seeing the impossible? The answer, or a chilling fragment of it, lies buried in a document that was never meant to see the light of day. The Miller Report. Narrator: Commissioned in 1954 by a clandestine joint task force between the Office of Naval Intelligence and the CIA, Project Oubliette was tasked with a single, terrifying objective: to assess and contain the psychological fallout from what was internally designated the Gable anomaly. Heading this project was Dr. Alistair Miller, a psychiatrist whose work in wartime shell shock was considered revolutionary. His final report, a 300-page treatise on existential terror, was immediately classified above top secret, and all but 3 copies were incinerated. We have obtained a redacted section pertaining to Case Subject 7. Lieutenant Commander Thomas Egan, a naval aviator who was the first to fly over the location and the last to see it intact. Narrator: Egan's initial debrief was coherent, if unbelievable. He described a coastline that defied geometry, with angles that hurt the eyes and cliffs that seemed to fold into themselves. He spoke of vegetation in colors that had no name, and a profound, deafening silence that felt, in his words, older than sound itself. But it's in Dr. Miller's follow-up sessions that the true horror unfolds. Egan's mind was not just traumatized. It was being unwritten. He began to suffer from what Miller termed ontological decay. He would forget simple concepts, like the color blue or the function of a door. His spatial awareness collapsed. He would walk into walls, unable to perceive them as obstacles. He developed acute chronophobia, a paralyzing fear of the passage of time, claiming he could feel the moments of his life flaking away like old paint. Narrator. A quote from a transcript, heavily redacted, reads, "It's not that I saw it, it's that it saw me. The place. It's a memory that eats other memories. When I try to remember my wife's face, I just see the shoreline. The impossible shoreline." The official explanation for Egan's condition, and that of the half-dozen other naval personnel who had even a glancing encounter with the anomaly, was prolonged exposure to unidentified atmospheric toxins, resulting in severe psychosis. They were quietly discharged, institutionalized, and erased from service records. But Dr. Miller's private conclusion, scribbled in a margin and barely legible, tells a different story. He wrote, "The human psyche is predicated on a stable, shared reality. Subject 7 was exposed to a reality that is fundamentally incompatible with our own. His mind isn't broken. It is simply obeying a new, incomprehensible set of rules. We are not dealing with a poison of the body, but a poison of existence itself." The Miller report concludes that the location was not just a geographic anomaly, but a cognitive hazard, a place that, by its very nature, dismantles the observer. The greatest threat was never that the location would be found again, but that the memory of it could never truly be forgotten by those who saw it.
Narrator. An axiom of cartography is that a map is a representation of reality. But what happens when reality itself is in dispute? The primary evidence for our phantom landmass is the 1953 NavGeo Chart 7B, a highly detailed hydrographic survey chart of a remote sector of the South Pacific. For approximately 72 hours, this chart was official. It was distributed to naval fleets, entered into the global registry. Then came the recall order. Urgent, absolute, and backed by threats of court-martial. Every copy was to be returned and destroyed. The official story was a catastrophic printing error. But sailors talk, and they spoke of a new island on that chart, an island designated Gable Island, which on all previous and subsequent maps was nothing but open deep ocean. Narrator. For decades, Chart 7B was a ghost story, a myth among old sea dogs. But if the location was real, even for a moment, could it truly be erased without a trace? The answer is no. Reality, it seems, has a memory, and that memory leaves scars, not on the land, but on the records we make of it. This is the field of comparative cartography, and it is here we find the echoes of Gable Island. Let's begin in the 17th century. The De Vere Atlas of 1688, a masterpiece of Dutch cartography. In the precise coordinates where Gable Island would later appear, there is a strange, unique annotation. Not, "Here be dragons," but a more specific, more chilling warning in Latin. Locus qui se contradicit, the place that contradicts itself. For centuries, scholars dismissed it as philosophical flourish. But what if it was a literal warning from a mariner who had seen the impossible and had no other words for it? Narrator. Now let's jump forward to 1964, the height of the Cold War. The Soviet spy satellite Cosmos 44 is making a photographic pass over the Pacific. Its mission: to map American naval patrols. For 99% of its pass, the data is perfect. But for a single block of telemetry, corresponding to the exact location of the former Gable Island, the data is corrupted. It's not just static. It's a geometric pattern of noise, a digital ghost that, when analyzed by modern fractal algorithms, resolves into a topographical map, a map of an island, a map that is a near-perfect match for the coastline described in the debriefing of Lieutenant Commander Egan. Narrator: the final echo is the most recent, and perhaps the most compelling. In 2011, the NOAA vessel Okeanos Explorer was conducting a high-resolution bathymetric survey of the same region. Their multi-beam sonar painted a picture of a flat, featureless abyssal plain, exactly as expected. Except for one spot. A single perfectly square kilometer, where the sonar data was simply missing. Not distorted, not weak, but absent. The ship's lead oceanographer described it as a hole in the ocean floor, a place from which no data would return. When this sonar void is overlaid with the Cosmos 44 data and the coordinates from the De Vere Atlas, the alignment is perfect. 3 different maps, made with 3 different technologies across 4 centuries, all point to the same impossible truth. Gable Island wasn't just an error. It was a geographic feature so alien that it left behind temporal and digital ghosts, faint cartographic scars, proving that for one brief moment, a place that shouldn't exist did. Narrator: we have explored the psychological trauma, the cartographic ghosts, and the deep-sea enigma. Each path leads to more profound questions. But perhaps we have been asking the wrong question all along. We have obsessed over where the location was and where it went. It's time to consider a far more disturbing possibility. What if the anomaly was not one of space, but of time? Narrator: this is the temporal displacement hypothesis. It posits that Gable Island was not a part of our world at all, but a piece of another era, the deep past or the distant future, that briefly and violently intersected with our own timeline in 1953. The evidence for this is as bizarre as the theory itself. A single rock, allegedly recovered by a reconnaissance team before the recall order, became a source of intense study. Known as the Exeter Stone, its analysis yielded impossible results. Carbon dating suggested it was less than a decade old. Yet potassium-argon dating placed its age at over 3 billion years. Stranger still, certain trace elements within the stone existed in a state of quantum flux, seemingly not having decided which isotope to become yet. It was simultaneously ancient, new, and not yet formed. This temporal paradox was echoed by atmospheric reports from the time. Ships hundreds of miles away reported compasses spinning uncontrollably, not just pointing north or south, but spinning through all 360 degrees. Shortwave radio operators picked up phantom broadcasts, garbled snippets of what sounded like Roman legions marching, mixed with coded messages in a language that would not be invented for another 50 years. The location wasn't just in the wrong place, it was in the wrong time. Narrator: yet there is one final theory, one that encompasses all the others, and is, by far, the most terrifying. The geographic glitch. This theory steps back and looks at the very fabric of reality itself.
It suggests that our universe operates on a set of fundamental rules, much like a complex computer simulation. And in 1953, for a few short hours, that simulation glitched. The location that appeared was an error, a misplaced asset, a piece of the universe's code from a beta version, or perhaps a different simulation entirely, that accidentally rendered in our world. This one radical idea explains everything. The psychological fallout? The human brain, the user, encountering the source code of reality and being driven mad by the revelation. The cartographic echoes? Data fragments and cache errors left behind after the system frantically tried to patch the mistake. The deep-sea structures? The digital footprint of the error, burned into the hard drive of the planet. The disappearance wasn't an event. It was a hotfix. A developer deleting a bug that threatened to crash the entire system. Narrator. It is the most complete theory and the most horrifying. Because if it was a glitch, a single error in the code of existence, it forces us to confront the ultimate question. Was it the only one? Are we living in a stable build of reality? Or are there other errors, other misplaced assets, waiting to be rendered? The true horror of the location that appeared only once is not that it vanished, but that it proved our world, our history, our very lives, might be nothing more than a fragile program that could be patched, updated, or deleted at any moment, without any warning at all. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. Some places, once found, are determined to be lost. In the immediate aftermath of an event so impossible it defied physics, the official response was not one of transparent investigation, but of calculated and swift suppression. The disappearance of an entire geographic location, complete with its inhabitants and infrastructure, was not a problem to be solved, but a truth to be buried. What followed was a masterclass in institutional misdirection, a pattern of disinformation so pervasive it poisoned the well of public record for decades. The first official story, leaked through carefully selected press contacts, was that of an unseasonal catastrophic geological event, a subterranean subsidence event of unprecedented scale. It was clean, scientific, and utterly false. Geologists not affiliated with the government were quick to point out that the seismic readings didn't support such a theory. Their reports were quietly classified. Their careers were, in several documented cases, systematically dismantled. Then came the second wave of narrative control. The story shifted from a natural disaster to a case of mass delusion. Whispers of a localized, potent hallucinogen in the water supply were seeded in fringe publications, later to be picked up by more mainstream outlets looking for a sensational angle. The few eyewitnesses who were miles away, those who saw the sky warp and the horizon simply erase itself, were painted as hysterics or opportunists. Their testimonies were recorded, analyzed, and then filed away in folders stamped with dismissive psychological evaluations. This was the era of Project Mockingbird's shadow operations, where truth was a commodity to be manipulated. The objective was clear: make the story so ridiculous, so saturated with conflicting, outlandish theories, that the average person would dismiss it entirely as a folktale, an anomaly, a weird footnote in a forgotten local newspaper. Behind the scenes, a far more serious operation was underway. Declassified documents, heavily redacted but revealing in their omissions, refer to Operation Clean Slate. This was the physical and digital scrubbing of the location's existence. Maps were redrawn, census records were altered, property deeds vanished from county archives, birth and death certificates became ghosts in the system. Any official paper trail that proved the location and its people had ever existed was systematically targeted and erased. This wasn't just hiding a tragedy, it was unwriting history. We found a memo from a high-level official to a department head, dated just 3 weeks after the event. Most of it is blacked out, but one chilling line remains. The memory must be as vacant as the ground. The ground itself was cordoned off for years, declared an environmental hazard zone due to a supposed chemical spill, a convenient fiction to deter the curious and allow federal teams to remove any lingering, inexplicable evidence. This wasn't a cover-up. It was a meticulous, state-sponsored exorcism of reality.
The bureaucratic machinery of the cover-up was brutally efficient, but it could not erase the one thing it couldn't classify, redact, or bury: human memory. While official history was being rewritten, a private, fractured history was being passed down, in hushed tones, through tearful stories, and in the form of strange, unsettling heirlooms. For the families of those who vanished with the location, the official narratives were a cruel insult added to an impossible injury. They were the living legacy of the lost, the keepers of an unacknowledged wound. We traveled across the country to meet some of them, the children and grandchildren of the erased. Their stories are the ghosts that still haunt the periphery of this mystery. We met a man named Samuel, whose grandmother was a school teacher in the town that disappeared. He never met her, but he inherited her entire collection of books. Tucked inside a worn copy of Moby Dick was a letter she was writing to her sister, dated the day before the event. It speaks of ordinary things: the weather, a student who was struggling with his reading. But the last, unfinished sentence is chilling. The air feels thin today, and the compasses are all pointing. Then there is Eleanor, whose great-uncle was a land surveyor mapping the region for the state. He was a man of science, of hard data, and empirical evidence. His family was left with his field journals. Most pages are filled with precise measurements and geological notes. But the final week's entries become erratic, almost frantic. He describes bizarre magnetic fluctuations, instruments failing, and a persistent, low-frequency hum that no one else seemed to notice. His last entry, scrawled in a shaky hand, reads, "The topography is wrong. The sight lines are shifting."
It's not the map that's wrong, it's the land. Eleanor showed us his final, unsettling artifact. A geological core sample from the area. A piece of granite that, according to a lab she secretly paid to analyze it, contains isotopes that should not exist on Earth. It is impossibly dense, and she says that on quiet nights she can sometimes feel a faint vibration coming from it. These families are not conspiracy theorists. They are mourners, trapped in a state of perpetual ambiguity. They have no graves to visit, no death certificates to frame. They exist in a limbo created by the official denial of their own family history. Their parents and grandparents were labeled as delusional or liars, a stigma that followed them for the rest of their lives. They speak of a shared inheritance of loss, a sense of being disconnected from their own roots because the ground from which they grew was surgically removed from the world's memory. Their testimony is the most powerful rebuttal to the cover-up. A file can be redacted, a map can be redrawn, but the story of a lost loved one, passed from one generation to the next, has a permanence that no government agency can ever hope to extinguish. Every major cover-up has a dark heart, a secret engine driving the deception. In the case of the location that vanished, that engine was a clandestine operation known by a single, cryptic codename: Project Sandpiper. For years, it was a ghost, a rumor whispered among intelligence community insiders. But a series of targeted information requests and one crucial leak have allowed us to piece together a terrifying silhouette of its purpose. Project Sandpiper was not a response to the event. All evidence suggests it was the cause. Officially, the project never existed. Unofficially, it was a multi-agency, black-budget initiative operating out of a now decommissioned underground facility miles from the location. Its mandate was dangerously ambitious: to explore and potentially manipulate space-time topology. They weren't studying theoretical physics. They were trying to weaponize it. Leaked blueprints show designs for a massive, resonant frequency generator, a device intended to create localized, controlled gravitational distortions. The theory, as outlined in a physicist's partially recovered notes, was that by broadcasting a specific, complex waveform, they could fold space, creating instantaneous gateways between 2 points. But something went catastrophically wrong. The logs we've managed to access, though fragmented, paint a picture of escalating chaos in the days leading up to the disappearance. The project's scientists noted unforeseen harmonic resonance and extra-dimensional energy bleed. The generator was becoming unstable, and instead of creating a stable wormhole, it was destabilizing the very fabric of reality in a rapidly expanding radius. The target was a remote, uninhabited test site, but due to a cascade of system failures and a gross miscalculation of the energy required, the effect was magnitudes larger and centered on the wrong coordinates. It didn't just open a door, it tore the entire room out of the house. The location didn't move. It was, for all intents and purposes, deleted from our dimension. The unmarked grave of Project Sandpiper is not a physical place. It is the void in the official record. Following the disaster, the cover-up was not just about hiding an anomaly. It was about hiding culpability for the deaths of hundreds of American citizens. The personnel were scattered, their records sealed under national security orders carrying draconian penalties. The underground facility was stripped, filled with concrete, and buried, a modern-day tomb for a secret too terrible to acknowledge. The disinformation campaign wasn't just to manage public panic. It was to ensure that the men who played God and failed would never face a reckoning. The location and its people were the cost of their hubris. A sacrifice buried in an unmarked grave of classified files and concrete.
So where does this leave us? We have a pattern of deliberate disinformation, a legacy of unresolved grief, and the shadow of a secret project that tore a hole in the world. For decades, the story of the location that appeared only once has been treated as a closed book, a cold case relegated to the realm of folklore. But what if it isn't over? What if the book was never closed, merely left open on a page we are only now beginning to read? In the modern era of citizen science and accessible satellite technology, the official story is facing new challenges. Independent research groups, using ground-penetrating radar and magnetometers, have mapped the area where the location once stood. Their findings are unsettling. The geology is stable, but there is a persistent, documented gravitational anomaly, a dent in the local gravity field that cannot be explained by any known natural formation. Furthermore, sensitive radio telescopes pointed at the empty coordinates occasionally pick up faint, coherent bursts of energy. They are not random noise. They are structured, almost like a distorted echo. a signal repeating from a place that no longer exists. The case is being pried open again, not by government agencies, but by the intellectually curious and the personally invested. Online communities of archivists and analysts pore over the declassified Sandpiper documents, using AI to cross-reference redacted names and fill in the blanks. They are connecting the dots, building a clearer picture of the science and the scientists involved. A new generation is asking the questions their parents were told to forget. The prevailing theory among these new investigators is not that the location was destroyed, but that it was displaced, pushed into a dimensional tangent, existing parallel to our own reality, but out of phase with it. They believe the energy bursts are moments when the veil thins, when the lost location's reality briefly brushes up against ours.
Is it possible that the people, the buildings, the entire town are still there, trapped in a timeless bubble, waiting for the frequency to be tuned back in? This is no longer just a story about the past. It is an ongoing mystery. The official silence remains deafening, but the hum of strange data grows louder every year. The cover-up created a void, but it is a fundamental law of nature that a vacuum cannot be sustained. Something will always rush in to fill it. In this case, it is a wave of new evidence, new inquiry, and a chilling, persistent question. If a piece of our world could be so easily and completely removed, what is to stop it from happening again? The case is open. The files are active. And somewhere, in the static between worlds, a location is waiting to reappear.